I'm aware that it's probably the most tired time of the day. I will try to keep it awake. If you need a nap, that's okay. I'm sure I'll make you at some point. So have a little nap, you'll feel better for it, but I'll just keep going, okay? And you let me know when you've had enough. So I just wanted to pick up on what some of the other speakers had said. So I get the sense that a lot of people who are in the room are thinking of setting up a school, and that can be really, really daunting. And I know, because we did it 20 years ago, and it is very lonely work. And I think what the previous speakers have alluded to a little is that it is really lonely work, but it doesn't have to be so lonely. I think when we did it, we were amongst the earlier pioneers, and we took on a lot, and we, as you'll see as I talk through, we did a lot. So a lot of things that we had dreams. We tried to see these dreams eventuate, and they were happening, and we were keeping up with them. So they were happening faster than we thought, and so we were doing those things on our own. And I would encourage that, seeing there are so many of you in the room today, that you don't do that on your own, and that you, because some of the speakers today have offered their support, and that you try to use us as much as possible, because I can tell you that we will learn and strengthen our own projects and our own programs in that process. So I'm the high school coordinator. I have always been the high school coordinator at my school. That's my official title. For a couple of periods here and there, I've been head of school. I much prefer being high school coordinator. So I congratulate heads of school, but I much prefer being in the classroom. I teach the humanities, I taught philosophy, I currently teach psychology, and I teach English literature and language to the middle school, and have taught history and English to the older children as well. And like many teachers in Montessori schools, we have to wear many hats sometimes, and we are a small school, so that's what we've done. So I also wanted to say that when I stand here before you, I'm part of the team who have all collaborated on this presentation. So and they are members past and present. So I put together my presentation and sent it out to people who were there when they were setting up the school. They are really a really important resource, and one not to be lost, because they are your connection to what really was the vision at the beginning. So I will talk a little about our founding teacher, her name is Josie Ludwig. She is 86 years old today. She still comes in and works for us. She comes to visit. She's always welcome, anytime, in anyone's house and in anyone's classroom. And she is somebody who she still sits on our board, and she will just offer little bits of wisdom that ensure that that vision is not lost. I remember my head of school many years ago saying, I keep dreaming of the train on the track, and I keep going in the wrong direction. And that was a sign to us that it was time to meet with Josie again, and to meet with the people who really had that Montessori vision again. So it was Josie. There was also a Cycle 3 teacher at the time who was very strong and is still a part of our school. When our students graduate, we have a high tea, and on that list is Josie, Elizabeth, our head of school, Miria, who was their Stage 3 teacher, and any others, teachers who they recognise have been really important along the way. So that's something I would really encourage that you do, that you keep contact. As you move beyond pioneers, that you keep contact with those people and use the network, because we all, everyone, I still have an awful lot to learn, And that's why we're in this job, because I think we're always happy to keep learning. So I thought that probably the best way to start would be to introduce you to I'm going to be speaking about the tensions, because this tension is there all the time between, are we doing the right thing? What is, and constant questioning. And that's what we actually ask of our students. And it's them sitting, I say to them, you just need to sit with that uncertainty for a little while. I don't want the answer. Yeah, we all do. But you've got to sit with that uncertainty, because that uncertainty, out of that comes something quite magical that can be sustainable. Because that was another thing that I noticed people came up and wrote up there. How we've got this vision and this passion, but how is it going to last? You want to be up here in 20 years' time. I never thought I'd be in Taiwan in 20 years' time. I'm really glad I am, thank you. But it is, you want to keep going, and what is it that can allow you to keep going? So I thought that the first thing we could do would be to introduce you to Josh, who has, a few years ago, he'd probably shoot me for showing you this, but he put together this little promotional video about the school, because I want to take you to Wollongong, which is where the school is set. And it's a place that I was born and bred. So I was born in a suburb about 20 minutes from the school. I now live 15 minutes from the school. So I'm very connected to that place. So Josh had to try and capture that and sell it, sell the school. And it does look a little different from what it looks like today. But whilst he was doing that, he also made a few spelling errors, which I've left, because they're important. The other thing we need to understand is, just as we, as educators, are making errors, we're experimenting a lot of the time. There are some tried and true things, but it's important that the children are friends with error as well, because it's so much a part of philosophy. So it's very short, but it's fun. So I'll play it for you.
Excuse me. Yeah. I'm sorry to interrupt. Can you put your microphone?
Sure.
Not you, so that I can hear you.
Imagine a place where children can explore their world, discover new knowledge, and realize their potential. Where they really want to come to school each day. Imagine wearing whatever clothes you want. Well, this is Montessori. Montessori offers high-quality education from preschool to year 10 and HSC. And the IB offers an international diploma program for year 11 and 12. Montessori makes sport fun. From the beach, bowling, dodgeball, basketball, Montessori has many options to suit everyone. Come and join us. We'll make you feel like a rock star.
They were 2 year 7 boys who worked on that, so they were about 11 or 12, yeah, and had so much fun doing it. So this gives you some indication of where Wollongong's located. So we're about an hour and a half south of Sydney, which means we can hop on a train and we can get to Sydney very quickly. So we can be there in an hour and a half. And it's quite an easy location. And the reason I mention that is because place is so important to our program. We're by the sea, as you saw. We're also by the mountains. I don't know if that's so clear, but the mountains offer an incredible opportunity for hiking. We can walk, basically there's a free bus that runs around our area, so we quite frequently put 30 children on the free bus, and they will drop us off, and just at the foot of these mountains is the university. So we have easy access. We can walk to the university within about 20 minutes, and then we've got access to these mountains, and there's a range that runs all the way down the side, like it's sort of, we're nestled in to that. So it's a really rich area for studying a number of for applying our curriculum, I guess, and for using that as something that we can tap into in a very ready, available way. We're also, so that gives you some idea of our coast. There are a number of different activities that we can do along there. So we also have a beautiful lake that the children can sail on. But yeah, the beach features very strongly in our program because of the history behind that as well, but also just because of the geography. We often will walk up Mount Kira, which is one of the mountains I showed you, look down and be able to walk down that area. It'll take a day, it'll take about half a day to walk down. We'll get to the beach and you'll be able to examine what's been washed down and look at the actual geology that's down there, whilst doing a number of other things. I don't know if you can see that so clearly. Okay, so I'll talk you through, but in 1980, the way the school was started is, so there was a very small community school that was, no, I might just miss the font. Yeah. So there was a meeting held at the university. So I don't know, you'll see that in another slide. But the uni is very close to us, and there was a meeting that was held there. Just someone was very interested in Montessori, and they wanted to meet up with other like-minded. It's very similar to your story here. And people met at the university and started talking about setting up a Montessori school in the Wollongong area, attached, I think, to the university, because there were a lot of people who were teaching at the university who were really interested and knew about this method of education. So from there, in 1982, this small group decided that they'd start advertising for to see if we could find a Montessori directress or director who would come out and they could set up this Montessori school. What happened is, nearby, very close to where I live actually, there's a very small church, and the interested parents decided, well, we can't afford to buy a facility. And I think that's another thing about this school. It has very much been built on nothing. It's been built on goodwill. So there was very little money around. And so they hired this school initially, and this church, and what they would do every Friday is they would pack up the equipment and then put it away in a storage, and then Sunday night after church services or Monday morning they would reset up the classroom. Now that school became known as Illawarra Montessori Preschool. So Illawarra is actually our region, and that school still exists today, and it is one of our feeder schools. So they have since bought the premises of the church, and they have done various renovations to it. It's a really beautiful little school, but it functions very much as a 3 to 6 classroom with some long daycare. But again, I'll talk more about the long daycare because that is something that is very important financially, particularly to the schools in Australia, the Montessori schools. So we, in 1983, this is where our founding teacher, Josie Ludwig, came on board. Josie was from the Netherlands. She had been to Montessori primary, a preschool, and a primary and a secondary school as a child herself. So she had been taught in the Montessori way. And then she came out to Australia and she became a teacher, but she was teaching in mainstream schools. And she actually set up, again, in Berkeley, next to that Montessori preschool, and she, which wasn't a Montessori preschool at the time, and she had actually approached the Department of Education at the time she said, I want you to give me your most challenging children and I will put them in the classroom and I will teach them. I don't mind if they are, what age group they are, but I would like to teach them in the Montessori method. And she said, yes, we might need to purchase some materials, but this is what I feel we need to do. Now, the department at the time declined. They said they wouldn't support it. And she would have to keep instructing in the manner of mainstream. So from there, she then saw this advertisement in our local paper. And from that, she applied, and the rest, basically, is she went on to establish the first Montessori school in our region. And she, although trained as a teacher with an institute, in 1986 she underwent a year's intensive AMI training, and she was commuting every day to Sydney. So for 12 months she was back and forth, basically, and then became an AMI teacher. So she stayed within the system, and it became our first Montessori primary school in the region. What we did then is the school hired out, because we were growing, and they hired out a small school near a fitness centre in Wollongong. And it was a really beautiful old facility by a lake and by a river. And they set up in that area, and again, what started to happen is the word got out and it grew. So we started, I guess, from very small. And to give you an idea of the numbers, at the time, it went from 15 students, and now at the school, so we've moved site, and I'll show you what that looks like. We have 195 students at the site, but that's full-time equivalent. So across from the age of 18 months to 18 years on site. And we offer the IB program, the diploma program, in year 11 and 12, which I'll talk a little bit more about. So, by 1996, the site includes, we had one stage 1, which is a cycle 1, got preschool 3 to 6 classroom, 2 stage 2 classes, 1 stage 3 class. And then in 1997, Josie, who we talked about, and our head of school at the time, had heard about a school in Western Australia, in Kingsley, which was run by a woman called Mrs. Dyker. And she had been trained by Marie Montessori, and they decided that they would visit over there. And they had heard that an adolescent program was running. And in fact, they were the first to set up an adolescent program in Australia. So they went over, had a look, and then started to hold parent information centre sessions in order to let parents know, well, your children don't want to leave, they don't want, they're telling us they don't want to go in year 6, so at the end of the elementary, this is what this could look like. So interest started to grow, and then what they did is they thought, well, they had to, so much like Carlos's school, we are also run by a board, and they are parents. So I understand your challenges, but also the strengths of it. So there were 2 parent board members at the time who said, yes, we want this to happen. They, along with Josie and along with the head of school, because at the time, this is pre-internet, so we couldn't get curriculum documents that we needed to tap into very easily. So to give you an idea, when Carlos referred to Australia being very difficult in terms of setting up a program, they are very difficult, and also added to that is that at the state in which we work, so where I'm from New South Wales, they add another layer of difficulty. So because they're special. So what they do is we have a program of study that we must follow. So all of our students are required to do, say, 200 hours or 400 hours of English over 4 years. Those 400 hours must include Shakespeare, novels, poetry. They're quite prescriptive, which is fine, but added to that, they have pages of outcomes which we must address, and we must provide evidence of addressing. So that evidence of addressing can fill books, and in fact that's what we've just been through in June of this year again. So what they do is that happens as an accredited school. We're required to provide that evidence and that documentation every 5 years and show evidence of working with them. So it was quite a challenging task for them, but added to that was they had to go to university to actually find syllabus documents and to look at, well, how are we going to put in this application, thinking that it would take quite a while to see that through. In fact, they put in the application, they basically split up subjects. They said, right, you do maths, you do English, you do that, and divided amongst themselves. Only one was an educator. So only Josie. The others, the head of school at the time, her background was health and administration. The two parents, their background, one was health and one was social work. But they were driven to make this happen. So they sat and they looked through documents and they put in a submission to our Board of Education that said we want to start these new years of schooling. And to their surprise, and I'm still surprised, that submission was accepted, and the adolescent program at high school began in 1999. And so I guess they were a little caught by surprise, but there were at the time 5 students who started, and those 5 students were determined that they didn't want to go anywhere else. In fact, one of those students, his son is in Cycle 3, and so I will be teaching the 2nd generation shortly because he comes up to us next year. So they've remained quite loyal to the school. So in 2001, the numbers that we had outgrew that space in that building by the river, and so the school actually purchased the building. And the history of the building they purchased was really interesting. So it's actually an old, it's had a number of different carnations, I guess. So it was, it's quite a big property. It's urban. It's right in the middle of residences on either side and behind us. It was at one point a home and school for children with disabilities. And at other times it was an aged care facility. So the high school is now in what was the hospital wing of that facility. So it had a lot of artefacts as we went in at the time that were, like steel beds, and it was awful, and pokey little rooms. And for a long time we didn't use that part of the building because it had such an awful feel to it. It really, it used to frighten the students. There were staff who wouldn't walk in there. So we had sleepovers at the school for various events, but it became the place where they tried to sleep in, and hiding. But when we did renovate that space, we made sure we got a lot of light into it. We had timber floors put in. We just opened the space right up to the outside as well, so that there's areas where the children can work outside as much as possible, which they do a lot. So yeah, that was even just doing that was a very controversial move. I came on board that year. So I started at the school in 2001 and came into a lot of, I could feel a lot of discontent amongst the parent body, because some felt we should stay at the old site, and others thought that we were paying all this money. Why are we doing this to buy this site? And now, when we look back, it was the right decision, because we've now managed to secure another site next door, well, two sites next door, and then another building which will be the IV suite. So it was the right decision but had to be managed very, very carefully, I think. And I think too that something that's come up in the presentations is this need to be able to speak to parents and to make sure that our communication is very clear about what it is that we're doing. And I'll also talk a bit about enrolments when we get to it too. So, because that I think has been something that I've learned and has been really important. So this is the site. It gives you a little bit of an idea. So we are right here. And for those who come to visit us soon, this is the main road that comes down from Sydney. And this heads further down our coast. And this is the entry into Wollongong itself. So we're located right there on a little slip road. So we've got protection from a very busy road. And this is another main road here. But you can see that children can walk to the beach. There's the uni has a branch here called the Innovation Campus, which is fantastic because they have startups and you know, some of our students have just done work experience there and had a great time because they've been working with 3D printers and yeah, in the mechatronics, making all sorts of stuff. They've loved it. So there's a lot of film-based over in Innovation Campus as well. So our students go over there. We've had a student basically being in an intern for about 3 years now. So she's in year 12 now, but she's had a mentor all the way through connections that have been made. So the uni's here, and it has everything. Our science students use it a lot, particularly this year in the IB we're running physics. So it's been really important. It's got a very strong engineering department. So it's been really, and it's so easy. And they love Montessori children, and they love IB children. So when it comes to now the students this week and next week will be having their interviews for early entry, because some universities will give you entry earlier before you actually sit your exams, and Wollongong's one of them. So our students put in for that early entry, and they are given, every child we have had apply has been granted early entry, and some with Dean's Scholar. So it's quite reassuring to know that it's there. Having said that, they don't all go to Wollongong University, and I'll talk more about that later on. So when I started in 2001, I honestly had no idea what I got myself into. So no idea. In fact, my children were still young. I had been interested. Again, I think I came to Montessori when my eldest was born. She's now 24. And I looked at her, and I had been teaching for many years, and I thought, no, we can't do it this way anymore. It has to happen another way. And I think I was always a Montessori teacher in the classroom. I was always somebody, and it's interesting, in looking at recruitment of staff, there's some of the things that come out when I'm interviewing teachers. It's this understanding that they've been looking for something else. This is what they think it looks like. And I think that's what's really important when we're picking teachers. It's to hear what they think it looks like. Because sometimes they think it's just this free-for-all. It's this very open and very fluid. And I think that can do children a real disservice in the wrong hands. So I came on board and was to be there for 3 months, because I was doing some training at the time, and they said, could you please help us? We're waiting for some people coming from Texas, and they're going to be here in 3 months' time. And I said, oh no, my little boy's, he's only young, I don't know if I want to do that. No, it's only 3 months. And I'm here 18 years later, because the Texans didn't turn up. They were a husband and wife team, and they couldn't fly out. And I don't know if it was a visa issue. So I ended up staying, and at the time, I was the generalist teacher, and then we had a French, a native speaker who was our assistant, who also taught in the younger years, and she also taught French to our high school students. And then what we did is we outsourced the science, and we had a maths teacher come in. Now, we have a technical college really close to us as well, and they have really great labs, so facilities, because we didn't have any of those. So we had for many years a sort of an understanding with them that we would use their labs. And it was an expensive way to do it, but it was a lot less expensive than building a lab. So we were sort of putting off what we would need to do. So the other thing about our education system is that our schools can be registered or they can be accredited. And if they're registered, there's a simpler layer of requirement, but if they're accredited, it becomes much more detailed. And our students, at the time, there was an exam that you could sit at the end of year 10. And our children said, well, why can't we sit that exam? And I said, well, why do you want it? And they said, well, because we've done the work. We know what we're doing. Why is it we can't sit this to prove that? So they were having these discussions, and all through the year before was saying to me, well, but how do we know we're learning? How do we know? So they were doubting themselves because they had friends at other schools who were doing all these other things. So it became a way to benchmark. So all through 2001, we got the documentation together, and it was very difficult to do because as a small school, you only have a handful of people to do it. So you really are pushing. And we submitted the documentation, and the department gave us such a grueling. They worked so hard. They had me in tears, actually, which is not too easy to do. But they really were, because we were the first. And I think they realised that if they allowed this to happen in New South Wales, it was going to be happening and growing, and it could be something that they would grow too quickly. Basically, our head of school at the time said, well, you can complain as much as you like. We need you to tell us what we need to do. We are not going away. And so that's, I think they realised we were very determined, and we persisted, and our students sat the exam. And that exam, in their wisdom, was abolished about 8 years later. But it meant that our children could sit that, and at the end of year 10 could say, here's my piece of paper. And it also meant that at the time we didn't have year 11 and 12 at the school, we only went to year 10. So it meant that when they transferred to another school, they had this qualification which gave them a really good indication, or they felt gave them a good indication of what they could do. So and I think it also reassured parents a little bit, although it was very much driven by the children to be able to sit that exam. And it was across English, maths, history and geography, these tests. So anyway, we got registration and accreditation in 2002, and then in 2009 again, the children were saying, why do we have to go when they get to year 10? Why can't we stay here for year 11 and 12? And we tried various things. We tried, maybe we could do some sort of online modules that you could do, because our qualification is a high school certificate in our state. Maybe we could do that. And it was very difficult for it to work. So we found that, because it wasn't very meaningful, so we found that in 2009 we started to look at the IB and as a diploma. And we visited other schools. I had visited Kingsley, looked at what they could offer. They said, you're going to do this with no money, just like we are, but what the children said is they were quite happy. So we begin discussions with the IB, and this is our first IB student, and these are some of our other students. So I don't know how much people know about the IB, the diploma program. There's a component of it that is creativity, activity and service. There's another component called the extended essay, which is a 4,000-word essay that the students have to do, which is very difficult. And then there's a theory of knowledge type, which is wonderful. And TOC's what's actually led us to develop a philosophy program that we do, we backward map to make it a bit easier for the kids. So in 2010, we implement. 2011, EMS is a authorised world school. We have one student, Marie, but it's a 2-year program. And Marie's visa requirements meant that she had to go back to France. And so she did her 2nd year of her diploma in France. So it meant that we were then left, right, we've got this IB, which is a very expensive program. What do we do? And there were very good reasons why we picked the IB too, which I'll go into later. At the same time, this was the old hospital wing, and this is what we renovated. So this had been corridors and rest. So if you can imagine that the facilities, this is actually the staff office. This is in here is a huge, it's quite a big creative arts space. Then there's a deck that's off that side where the children work. Further down here, off here there are 2 specialty rooms, and that's where we have our presentations, but we can present here as well. We can present outside. We have a lab, quite a big lab, that's over in this area, and we have a small music room. And then, very important, we don't have the smoothie machine, but we do have lots of lounges, which are down this section here, and that's where the children love to sit. In fact, they're very committed to their lounges, and we grew so much that one set of lounges wasn't enough, so we've had to purchase some others, and we've now also got more seating outside, so we've redeveloped our sort of playground area. But we also back onto a park, which has been our saving grace. So the park is, it's council park, so it's not ours, but they allow us to use that space, which is excellent. And there's a creek that runs along it. And there's also a lot of capacity to do a lot of work there because of the vegetation and its planting. So, why the diploma program? We actually, for a while, had to offer the state Year 11 and 12 curriculum, and then we had to offer the IB at the same time, which was really difficult. So it was a regulation. So we were stretched across both. The department has since relaxed that. So we just offer the IB diploma program. And the reasons are many. These are, I think, our 2016 graduating class. This is where they went to, they did a trip to Namibia, just as a French language immersion, because their IB subject is French, their language. So the approach is very much on method rather than content. Both promote individual inquiry. They both set very high expectations that all children have potential. They believe they both are internationally minded and global citizens. And these are the things that we're all lacking in our state curriculum. Now, I was reading the paper here in Taiwan a couple of days ago, and I actually quote an editorial later on, but I don't know if other people read that. There was an editorial on Thursday's paper, and it was written by a teacher of Chinese at a local high school, and he was talking very much about the new curriculum that has come out in Taiwan, and he was basically alluding to the 3 things that Theo spoke about this morning, and the fact that there is this opportunity now that you have, and he was talking about the need for collaboration, for independent thinking, for project-based learning that's very much in the hands of the children, and I think that the IB does that, and I think Montessori does that. So for us, it was a natural progression. It also is academically rigorous. It is really, it's meaningful and tough. And so we had to then go back, and it strengthened our program right down to the primary, because we are preparing our children and we know where they're headed. The other advantage is that all of our teachers who work in the IB, they all work in the middle school, and some of them work in the primary as well. So it's been a way to develop our teachers because they've had to, they've stretched. And it's also a way, because some people don't want to work part-time, they want to work full-time. So it means that we can give people part-time in the high school and the senior school, but then make up hours earlier. And that's worked really, really well. Some find it really challenging because I think, as Adam said, I find it difficult if I was in the 3 to 6 classroom all the time. I know my preferred space is being in the high school, but it's been, it allows us to cross, to cover all of these factors. Okay. The other is having challenging, uninterrupted work. These are, this is laughing yoga that took place a couple of weeks ago. That was good fun. This is a couple of our 2014 students working in the IB suite. So they have their own section, and that was because it was important for those year 11 and 12 students to know that they were separate, but they were still part of community. So they still work with the 7 to 10s. We're all on the same campus. So our 3 to 6 children walk over, and they're part of all of our celebrations. Our stage 2 children, they work with the high school on the reading program once a week. Our IB students work mentoring stage 2 children with reading. They're their reading buddies, and they monitor their reading progress. So both programs promote children's education for peace, both are child rather than teacher-centred, and both promote balance and harmony in the person. So this was Maria Montessori's birthday last year, and the cake's always baked by our stage 1 teacher who loves baking. So she bakes the cake, and it's always cut by the eldest child and the youngest child in the school. This is yoga with the chickens, so we have some chickens that the high school care for, and we use their eggs for our baking in occupations, and they were enjoying yoga with us the other day. So to give you an idea of how small we are, these are students who've graduated from our program, so our Year 12. So next year we'll have 14. This year we have 7 graduating. So and this is where we were running the HSC. So you can see that that top end of the school is very much supported financially by the rest of the school. So I could really relate to what Carlos was saying about if you're going to be doing this on one campus or as part of one environment, a big strength of our school is that all the teachers are there. where we socialise together. The primary, it's been quite deliberate that the primary teachers, we've tried to get them to come up and be a part of our group. On Fridays we'll go for drinks together. We have a book club that we all get together with and just try to promote that, because something I noticed really early was there was just a sense that lots of attention was going towards these upper areas of the school, which actually help the younger stages because they help enrolments. We get children who come in the early NIDO, so the parents of our 18-month-olds say, my child's enrolled in this school because I want that product. And they're talking about our 17, 18-year-olds. Because they leave at the same time at the end of the day. They're out the front, they're chatting to the parents that pick up. So they see that in a very real way. So that's been really important, and that I think it took about 5 or 6 years before that went. And now what we find is, if anything, sometimes we are supporting other parts of the school as well with our numbers. So recruitment is really one of the hardest things, I'd agree. So in the first year, we had a teacher who came in, non-Montessori. She stayed for a year. Then we had a Montessori generalist who came from Finland in the second year. And then I came on board in the third year. And then my strengths are humanities, so we really needed someone who was strong in math, science. And the children used to talk about this person as defence against the dark arts. You know, like in Harry Potter, they're always there, and then they're gone. So we found that was the hardest area to keep somebody. But we've had stability there since 2014 now, and in fact have 2 maths science teachers to accommodate our numbers, and they're really in sync with what we're doing. So backward mapping is really important. So because our program was growing so much, we were just keeping ahead of it as we went. In the last 5 years, we've been able to go back and really consolidate, and that's been vital. And as a result, our children are much readier, but there's always work to do. So the backward mapping is harder, I notice, when they go from year 10 to year 11. And I think that's something we've all noticed, and that's parent feedback as well. We do have homework. You know, we insist that in year 7 and 8, we back off a bit, and they have a lot of time to work on their work in an uninterrupted way. But by 9 and 10, we know we have to get them ready. So we're getting them used to really managing time. That's probably the hardest thing, managing their time. And then the feedback is, after they've done the IB program, when they go to university, that it's a breeze. The first year, they say, is almost a bit of an insult. Because they feel they can relax a little. Yeah. But that's because they've got the time management in place that helps them a bit more. So I think too, Pat Moody also, she talks about, you know, you have to foster the personality, and that's another difference. I had coffee with ex-students the other day. They get in touch and they surprised me. One of them had just had a baby and I didn't know. And we were all sitting around and having coffee. There was 3 of us. And they were asking how the school was going. I said, oh, it's going beautifully. You know, things are great. You should need to come and visit. And one of the things they said, that the advice they wanted to give to the teachers is they said, you need to tell them that they made us. So tell them that actually is something that they're responsible for. They could reflect on the fact that as adults, the people who had helped to create who they were. And I think one of the things we started with parents, first up, making it really clear that it's a partnership, that it's not a battle, that it's a partnership, that it's everybody doing this together, because adolescents need the village. Yeah. So that's why it needs to be a collaborative thing. So, yeah. So the continuing construction of the individual. So this is our team. We've got quite a few staff in the high school. It works out, our ideal is about 5.5 full-time equivalents for roughly 55 to 60 children is what we work to, which may help when you're making those decisions. And you can see that everybody wears many hats. So all the teachers do a variety of different things and have done for many years. And the other thing is that it's important that the children see that. Because I come from a mainstream background, and I originally was a bit resistant. And it was like, no, this is my specialty. But that's not what we're teaching the children. That's not what we're showing them. So it was, yes, we've got strengths, but I have to be able to do occupations, and I need to be able to teach psychology, but I'll sit in and help with algebra as well. Yeah, so it's, they need to see that. So the other thing is, and you're probably not at the point of timetabling and those kinds of factors, but a really important thing we need to do is keep the time to talk. So, and that's between the staff, because the teachers find it really difficult. We're so rushed, you don't have time to do that. So sometimes the children will just see us, when they're working independently, they'll just see us talking to each other. And it might be talking about work, it might be talking about the weekend, but they need to see that happening. And also, the time to talk to them, the time to talk to the children too, and give them the time that is it doesn't matter. I often say it doesn't matter how many times you ask that question. Let's go back again and look at that. And I don't know how you factor that in to a timetable, but it's just something that it's a balance. And I think that's the tension too, because the woman who trained me said, if you're sitting next to that child for too long, if you're sitting too close to them, and you're not looking at everybody else that's going on, then that presentation is wrong for that child. And I think that's where the tension comes in, because sometimes I need to give that child just that little bit longer, but then I also need to know when to step away and let them do it on their own and feel the uncertainty and feel the difficulty of it, and then know when to come back. Yeah? Do we need a break? Because I'm feeling like people need to move. Yeah, I don't know. Do you need a drink? You need to jump up and down. Are you okay? It's so hot. Yeah, just stretch. Good. Do you need a drink? Need to wriggle? Good. All right. Are there any questions so far? Maybe we can break it up with questions. I do the timetabling, and now there's our maths teacher who loves doing the timetabling, and I can show you the timetable, like our timetable later on, but the timetable is an art. And we really try, again, it's about valuing staff. So if our staff say, if they work part-time, and if they say to me, I would really love to not work Monday, Tuesday, that would be perfect for me, we will do everything to make that happen. Because we can't, our school's not in a position, I guess, to give them quite expensive remuneration. We work to an award that stipulates what we pay our teachers. So how we can help them might be in that way. You know, so they might be looking for work at other places, or they might like the 4-day weekend. So we really try to accommodate that, but then they're also very understanding that sometimes we can't do it. Other ways, I guess, is we really try to promote professional learning. So as much as possible, that's another thing. You know, making sure that if a teacher's asking, I'm struggling with this, especially in the IB, it's really demanding. And if there are things that they feel they need to spend 2 days with a teacher from another school, to subscribe to some supports, then we will try to make that happen as well. Any other questions so far? Okay, the other is parent expectation. So we do a bit of parent education regarding adolescents. I find that with our parent education, I don't know about you, but our parents tend to, you tend to get the same parents coming. So, and that's okay, but it's really good to reach a broader range. I find that parents are really busy. So one of the things we do is often we send out readings, which is what they like. They tell me they like them, which might help, and they might comment. We also keep them very well informed. So I send out a weekly newsletter to them, and it's via email, and they seem to really enjoy that. The school sends out a separate email, again, but mine is very high school specific. The IB coordinator sends one out that's IB specific. But it's just about things that are coming up, achievements, a call out for help, how they can help to volunteer and things like that. The other thing is building knowledge about the IB. We had many parent information sessions about that, so that people knew what they were getting into. They also, this one is always the hardest one. And I think we've become better at it, as in the school, our reputation in the community is understood now. So in the early days, it was, my child is very troubled, I need them to come to your school so that you can fix these problems. And being very compassionate people, we would take those children on. And the problem is, I learned to say, that's good, but I'm an advocate for all the children in that classroom. So if it's not going to work, I'm going to tell you straight away. So our enrolment process is quite, has become more thorough. So they will make an inquiry. Our enrolments person will get back to them within 24 to 48 hours. They will book in for a tour. They'll be taught around the school, all the school, but it could just be high school if it's only high school. They will then, if they put in an application form, if it's high school, they meet with me, and I will talk them through, and I have like a standard set of questions, but it's more getting a feel for the family and also the child, and whether I think it will work. Then what we do is we will give, regardless, we will give a trial day and offer a trial day. And that's been really useful, because that trial day then, the child comes, they see exactly what we do. Nothing special, it's a usual day, and then they just get a feel, again, for how things are. So it may not be what they expected. And it goes back to, Hannah, who spoke earlier. She didn't want to be at the school, but her parents did. And sometimes we have to go with that, and her story turned out beautifully. And likewise with us, we've had students who don't really want to be there, but in a short space of time, they see something else. So there's a boy who's just started with us called Sam. He's year 9, so he's 14, and his parents said, really, he's going down the wrong path. There's something, we're seeing the lights go out when he's learning. So, and that's a common phrase I hear when parents come, the light's gone out, they don't want to learn. and the parents were becoming quite worried about it. Sam wasn't. He wasn't worried at all. But he came to the interview and he was just so engaging, and we talked about some of the things he loved to do. And typically, music, he loved the beach. He was just introduced to the Prince because of his achievements in Prince Edward, in his achievements in sports for surf lifesaving. So he came for a trial day, and his comment when he went home was, "Mum, they just work. Like, they work and they talk to each other. The kids are really nice." And so we offered a second trial day, and he did the same. And he's now been with us for about 5 weeks. And the change has been quite remarkable. It's still early, but there's I've noticed his mother tells me he's now reading he's listening to his sister read to him every night, and that's as a result of him reading with the stage 2s. We also have stage 2s visit us often, so they'll come and they'll want to tell us, read their story to the older children. And Sam's comment was beautiful. He said to these very shy children, "You've read that very well." And this was a boy who who a few months earlier was not really engaging with his learning at all. So, and I don't know how long, that's the other thing, I don't know how long Sam will be with us. So he may not stay till year 12. But the point is, he's had a period of time where he's seen what learning looks like. He also wrote a beautiful poem about his granddad and the things that his grandfather's very good with his hands. So he's just written something very beautiful. So for him to share that with people he barely knows was also a good thing. Student expectation, freedom with responsibility, understanding the boundaries very quickly, I think is important. And being honest when it's not going to work. Balancing pressure and choice. So we're finding this with our senior students. So instead of saying to them, "Come on guys," and encouraging them to get their work done, we're actually doing the opposite. So we're having to say to them, "You need to stop now, and you need to back off. And these are the things you need to do in order to balance," because they're working so hard and they're so driven that it's causing pressure. So that's where CAS, and I find it at the end of year 12, because the CAS, which is the creativity, activity and service component, has wound down. They're not doing it as much. So they're tending to be more stressed about their exams, which are coming up in November, because we're in November session. Employability. There's a lot of discussion with the children about finding work, finding appropriate work, and we do a lot of work to assist that if they're going into work or work experience. But one of the things that we tell them is that we're training you, you're being educated for jobs that don't exist. So you need to realise that you're developing skills now, which doesn't give them a lot of assurance sometimes, but it's very rare, I don't know about here, but very rare to find an adolescent who knows exactly what they want to go into. They have a passion, but it's not that. It may not be that driven. And there are high demands that are placed on the staff, especially with the IB. So, there's a lot to be asked of them, because there is a tendency, like all senior programs or any program, to give them everything they need. And because of our philosophy, we won't do that. So we are constantly pulling back. That they'll say, but I need you to hand me, no, you need to engage with that work, and you need to do that. So it's putting it back on the children all the time. Okay. So what do we do? Here's some of our parents. We have parents very involved. There's a fundraising committee, they're on the board. We ask for parent volunteers quite a lot. So the things we do is we have parent information sessions. There's always one every term. So that's one every 10 weeks. And it'll be on a different area each time. So it might be on language, might be on mathematics or geometry, it might be on practical life. And what we do is we start in Nido, and then we actually tour them through the school and look at how we do that in every stage. And it's a good way to capture all parents so they can see the progression through the school. So we have a lot of celebrations and community events that are through the whole year, and parents are really involved in that. And we also encourage, because there are a lot of grandparents who are very involved, and so we try to pull them in as well, because they're an excellent resource and they're beautiful with the children. Parent agency, so it's an open door policy. We will hear what ideas they have and try to work with them, but we also draw a line and have had to say on a number of occasions, we're the educators, we do the educating, but that's a great idea. So I guess an excellent example is that we do a robotics program. Our team have been amazing. They won a national competition. They competed in Houston earlier this year, and the parents are really driven about that because the kids are so good at it. But something we've had to be very careful about is that it doesn't take over everything. Although they're very successful, yes, we can integrate it into certain things, but there are so many other aspects of children's learning that we need to take into account. So as I've said, early stages were very difficult. And I'm not sure, it sounds like your government is going to be very supportive. And that's not going to be necessarily one of the challenges. We now have an excellent relationship with the department. So they are very supportive. It's taken years, but they have been very supportive and very encouraging. Our inspection earlier this year took 2 hours. So they came in, they went, yep, that sounds great. What do you do for this? What do you do for that? And it was over. And we'll see them again in 5 years. So that was a relief. But it just shows you it was persistence that helps. We also have really built credibility in the community. So it's the early years. I would tell people I worked at a Montessori school, and I think they thought it was a cult of some sort. Something strange was going on there, and yet now it's been very different. It has a very different feeling. I think they realise again we're not going to go away, that the children that go to those schools are just wonderful children, and yeah, the staff are normal people. Also making sure we don't compromise our identity, so that we're a Montessori school, our campus is inclusive. We, as I said, and a big part of that is reconnecting with our founders repeatedly, and professional learning too. The workload is enormous. So I think back to those early years, and I would be up late, very, very late, repeatedly, just getting things done, because you're not sharing it across a faculty. In a small school, you're not sharing it across a faculty of 50, 60 staff. You know, you have to do it, which, because we were lonely at the time, you couldn't share it. Whereas now it's a different situation. There are already schools in New South Wales who are thinking of starting up. They've come to visit, we've shared documentation, and hopefully they'll get up and running. Because it can only get stronger the more people who are doing it. Oh yes, because I feel like those early years, we were jumping through a flaming hoop all the time. Yeah. So, and no, not now so much. No, now there's no fire. Yeah, it was very much like that. And you do what they'd suggested, and they'd say, no, that's not good enough. I need you to do this. And you know, I look back and I can now see the point, because I think it did make me a better teacher. In that now I think I joke that I'm trilingual, so I can speak Montessori, I can speak IB, and I can speak the department, like our national curriculum. And you have to do it. I resisted for a long time, but it was the only way. And once I gave in, I think, and we all gave in, we said, right, we've just got to do it. And sometimes it was as simple as changing a word, you know, or a sentence in the documentation to reflect the language of the curriculum, and that was all I wanted. You know, that phrase was missing. Right, sure, I'll put it in, do it for you now. Yeah. So it just is, yeah, we have become very resilient. So how do we manage? Know the syllabus and the guides. And you can't, and also I think we have to, teachers aren't very kind to themselves. So I don't think, I think we expect that we're going to have all the answers and know it all. You're not, never. So, but we need to know where to go to find them. And I think we do need to know. So I need to know my New South Wales national curriculum, because I need to know that what I'm doing every day is meeting, I'm ticking those boxes, but my children that I teach don't need to know that. They don't need to carry that stress. That's my problem. They need to just, the work is the key for them. Keep your teachers informed and connected so that they've got support at other schools. Identify, delegate, and utilise the strengths in your teachers and your staff. And we had a groundsman when I first started there, and he and I are still great mates, but he was the most well-read, qualified groundsman. So a groundsman is a maintenance man. So he would do our gardens, our lawns. He'd come from the corporate world of finance and got sick of it and just wanted to work with his hands. And so he was wonderful. And he used to come in and we would run the philosophy classes in the early days. He was so knowledgeable. And our children still know him, they still remember him. He also had a beautiful garden. So we used to take bus trips up, and you know, I was up there just last week and he's growing the most beautiful pineapples, which are very difficult to grow in our region. So it's using the strengths of everybody on staff, so not just the teaching staff. Our admin staff, one had a psychology degree, so she would mentor and help with another student doing an extended essay in psychology. And it was just a way of, and it also then unifies your staff. It's about thinking across, I guess, rather than trying to compartmentalise. And we all have individual strengths. So I don't mind documentation. I'd rather not do it, but I don't mind it. And yet I know there are other people on staff who really hate it. So I will do what I can to support them, but then I do say to them, what do we say to the children? You know, help me to help myself. So I won't do it for you, but I'll help you to make this happen. So it's just working out, and other stuff are great on well-being and supporting children with that care. So and the children know who they are, so we try to use them and support them in that area. Replicate the language in all documentation. So we must become multilingual, and to not stay lonely. So I think in the early days we were so busy that we were a bit closed with perhaps what we were doing, and I think advice would be to be sure to reach out, and that would be, you know, through network days. We had a liaison officer from the department that we used a lot. We have an advisory body. I don't know if you have the same in Taiwan, but they're excellent. So the AIS are ours, and they're in every state. And so if we have problems or needed advice, and we still do, you can ring them at any time, and they will advise you and clarify, especially around legal matters, for instance. Or, yeah, so that you need to use those and be visible. So we weren't very good at talking about how good we were, and yet as time's gone on, the children have done that for us. But I think it's important to do that, to not hide away. Because I think Montessorians can be quite humble and not want to brag about the things they do. And I think that you need to promote. Yeah, the time to talk, the language. Some photos of our children. Here's some more. This is part of the IB, is that the students doing art are required to do an art exhibition, and they need to gather together a body of work of a number of items. They need to also organise a venue. They need to organise the catering, the alcohol, the invitations, the marketing, because it's quite full on. This was actually my son's, so and he was the only student at the time doing art, and so I know how difficult that was, and so he had to find a gallery, and then fortunately one of our parents was a curator, and she came and she was fantastic, and they spent a whole day. And I think that was a surprise to him and to the others, because a few others exhibited as well, younger children, that it can take a whole day to get your art space ready. And then the media events and negotiating with liquor stores, you know, to keep the price down of the alcohol they're buying. So that's the other thing about, I know the temptation this year, for instance, in our exhibition, was for the school to pay for the catering and the alcohol. And it was easy because we're more financial now. But we decided that we wouldn't, because we were taking away, if we did that, from the learning opportunities from those children. And it was hard because they're stressed. They're doing other work at the same time. And I wanted to say to them, well, welcome to the world. But instead, I just, I said, okay, what do we need to do to make this happen? How can we help you? And so we talked about catering, we talked about approaching different liquor stores. The art teacher found a venue, they had to do all the emailing, what's the invitation going to look like. So that work started in February. And the art exhibition, actually, it was Tuesday night, and I flew out Wednesday morning, and it was beautiful. Who was going to play the music? So they enlisted a younger student to play for the day, so all the sound equipment had to go over. So those things are really important. This was some biology work that some of the IB students were doing out on one of the car parks. So it's, yeah, looking at the heart. So I guess my focus has been on IB because I'm a real advocate for making sure there's a senior program. And the reason is because just like Carlos was saying that, that the question was posed to him, why would you get them all ready and then they go? We came to the conclusion that why would we get them all ready and then they go? And if they choose to, that's great. But my first child, she decided in Year 10, because we were only just starting the IB, that I don't want to be a guinea pig here, Mum. So she went to another school, a local school, and she was fine. And she actually said, it's interesting, they'd switched off, a lot of the children. She felt that learning meant something different to them. But, so yeah, we decided that we would go with the IB, but we know also that the diploma program is not for every child because it's difficult. Yeah, there's a lot that they need to cover. It's also, they're examined on 2 years of content. So it's not just the final year, it's 2 years. So my students currently are studying 2 years of psychology content that is probably more difficult than the first, potentially the second year of university as well. So they need to be organised. What we have done is students who don't want to do the diploma program, there is something called a careers pathway. We've chosen not to follow that one because as a small school, it's a lot for us to take on. So we allow children to do the diploma program, but not get their diploma. So that means that they don't have to do 6 subjects that they have, and they don't have to do the extended essay perhaps. So the student this year who's in that situation, she's doing higher level art, higher level English, higher level business. She's also doing CAS. So she's cut down her load, but she's staying and she's achieving very well, but she knows and her family know that she won't get a diploma. So that means that when she wants to go to university, if she wants to go to university, we need to start negotiating with the university. And art is something, and film, that she would like to do. So that's easy for us to do, and she graduates next year, so they're the discussions we start having at the start of next year with the faculty she wants to go into, if she wants to go to university. So, the other thing we found is that we had greater student retention. So people would leave in year 6 because they were going to leave anyway. So we decided, well, we don't want them to go, and people have decided to stay on because they thought, well, here's a program that I can stay with to the end. So it's really strengthened our numbers. We retain, it's about 90 to 95% in year 6. They remain with us. We may lose, I find that year 9, we may lose 1 or 2. And they will start saying things like, the school's small, or they start worrying about the IB and they feel like they need to go somewhere bigger. That's one of the things they say to us. So we also have people coming to the school because of IB. We do pick up a lot of year 10 students from other schools that come. The other is that thinking is critical to the IB, and I wish I could have brought Harvey with me. So Pippa knows Harvey, he's quite a character. Harvey actually taught me. So when I was at high school, he was one of my teachers, and now we're colleagues, and he does a Be Prepared to Think project, and he's developed this project. His PhD is in the area of critical thinking. So his project has run across the whole school, from Nido to year 12. And he's developed a set of strategies that he uses in order to equip teachers with the skills to develop critical thinking. And one of them, for instance, is having a different perspective. So he will often, or we, because we all do it now, if you're presenting in a lesson, we encourage them the children to look at, well, let me give you an example. So if we're studying, can you give me an example? What's an example of something you may instruct with your children? So a lesson you might give, or a subject you might cover with your children. How many high school teachers in the room? None. Yeah, 2, okay. What's something you might study in the classroom? Cold War. Okay. So if I'm doing with the children the Cold War, and I am giving them the perspective of the Cuban Missile Crisis, and so if I'm talking to them about that, they may be reading a piece about the Cuban Missile Crisis, and it may very much be from the American perspective. So something that we will just let that unravel. So we'll present it to the children, they'll read that, and then one of the things we'll say to them is, okay, so your comments, they'll give us the comments, and then it'll be, so if you were on the other side of this, when these events were actually happening, what would that look like? And that's not even without them understanding a lot of the details around what happened at the time. So they need to then, it's more than just role playing, it's just looking at a whole other perspective. Something I do with my children is, it's called Afternoon Tea with the Thinkers. So year 11, psychology start at the beginning of the year, and they have to prepare a particular psychologist. And those psychologists come into the room. So they have 2 weeks to prepare, and sometimes they're dressed up. So you get them dressed as Freud, or they'll be Jung, or they'll be, let me think, Mary Ainsworth, they'll get Zimbardo, and they'll all be sitting at the table, and they have to be that person. And I provide afternoon tea because there's nothing an adolescent loves more than food. So we'll have food on the table, and then we'll be sitting, and they will actually be talking about different things. So I'll say to them, okay, so Pavlov, what are your ideas about how people learn? And Pavlov will present his ideas. And then Zimbardo will jump in and actually say, well, no, that's not what I think. And so they have to actually take on that person, and even if they've not researched thoroughly enough, they have to actually be that person for a while. And we actually set aside the afternoon, so we set aside 2 hours, but often it's gone into the next day. And it's one of the most valuable things, because through the rest of the next 2 years, it's that lesson I keep coming back to, because they remember it really well. So he has a list of strategies, which I think I outlined, but they're ones that the teachers are able to use all the way through the school, and they've developed lessons out of that. And he would love to share them with anybody, so if anyone's interested, let me know. We also do showcases, and they happen twice a year. And this is where the children from 7 to 10, but we often include 11 and 12, come in, and all the parents are invited. We also, from all across the school, we also have children from the younger years come in, usually year 6, and what they will do is actually present on a number of different things that they've been studying through that term, or through that 6 months. And then they'll be put on a panel, and they won't know that they'll be on a panel. So the children will be sitting up at the last minute, a number of them will be picked out, and then they can field questions from the audience or from their teacher, and they could be about anything. And that's been really useful, because it means that the children have had to think on their feet. You know, they have to know, they know that when they're going into showcase, this is what might happen to them. We don't do anything as teachers. So we don't set up their technical equipment. We don't make sure all of their slides are running. We don't have Joanna who's going to make sure everything works. They know they have to do it. So if the internet drops out, they have to know that might happen, and that they're going to need a backup to that. And that has meant that they've had to train themselves to be really prepared, and it's been invaluable. And that when the children come back to visit, they say when they have to give tutorials at university, they're not daunted by that. So it's been really important, and there's a trend to move it into the younger part of the school, into the primary as well. Collaborative practice in our planning, our care of the children as they transition through and through the planes of development. So I feel as a school that in our high school we're so busy, we don't do this well enough. We don't get together enough. There's talk of more pupil-free days, so the days where the teachers can actually have time to do that planning. Because currently we're relying very much on the strength of the team and on us being able to communicate with each other, and which we do. But I think that it needs to be done. It's something that we would need to work more towards. International mindedness is embedded in both the Montessori and the IB curriculum, and cross-cultural perspectives are studied. So in my psychology classes, for instance, when we're looking at abnormal disorders, we actually look at how they manifest differently across different cultures. So how depression may appear differently in Hong Kong as a symptom than in America. So, and that is actually written into curriculum. So that's why it's a really valuable, you can't overlook it. And the IB is really highly regarded by universities. So Wollongong, for instance, goes out of their way, Sydney, UNSW, to actively recruit our graduates. The CAS projects, so I think you spoke about the CAS, yeah. So it's creativity, activity and service, and they've been wonderful. So the children have to plan the whole lot. So they come up with their projects and they have to start it and see it right through. And it's now moved into what we do in our middle years as well. And our primary does it as well. And the extended essay, so it's a 4,000-word essay, and they choose to do that in a subject that they feel passionate about. So I've just supervised one that looks at the psychology, so they have to come up with the research question, they have to look at all the, basically I'm just a mentor, and I'm only supposed to give 5 hours of mentorship, which is not a lot, 4,000 words. And it's a really useful exercise. So when the children start, they always say, Alex, I'm not going to be able to write 4,000 words. And then by a year later, we're having to cut words because they found that their research skills and they've just blossomed. And also there's a lot of rubbish in there too that they just have to get rid of. So the one I've just supervised for English for psychology was to what extent do social cultural factors play a part in racist and discriminatory behaviour. And I have a number of students looking at the effect of music on cognition. That's our current year 11, specifically in adolescents. That's one student's doing that. The other is looking at the use of the benefits of technology on the adolescent brain. And he's hoping he's going to have a very strong argument, I think. Yeah, but they've done them right across a range of different subjects, and it's so interesting what they choose. So, in looking at the IB, it is expensive to run. So there's a $12,000 fee to be a school up front of annual fees. Teacher training is expensive, and all your teachers must be trained, otherwise you can't run the program. Some of the resourcing can be expensive as well, but I do find that all of it, like the teacher training as well as the resourcing, is really worth it. So even though it's an initial outlay, it really develops staff. The 2-year program can really tie the children, which is not a reason not to do it, it's just important to know. so that you can help the children through. Some children don't want to do a second language, and we argue that's really important that they do. Some don't want to do a maths or a science, but we basically say, well, then maybe the IB is not for you, because you have to do that. The only subject that's not compulsory, interesting enough, is visual arts or film, like a group of 6, and then they can pick up a second. So we have a lot of children who pick up a second science or pick up a second humanities subject. And it's very difficult to run with the national curriculum. So I know some schools have tried to run the 2 in the same classroom, and it's really difficult. So that makes it all the more expensive, and yeah, has been criticised as too academic. But there are ways to manage it, and small schools can be really flexible with that. Just aware of the time. This is our be prepared to think. So I'm happy to make that. So this looks at the techniques, the heuristics that Harvey uses in training us as staff about the things that we can encourage to encourage critical thinkers. And I must say our children are critical thinkers. But that's Montessori children right from the beginning. He loves doing this, so he'll give them a task, but he'll make sure he leaves out very essential components, which frustrates them no end, but it's really useful because it also builds their confidence in doing that. There you go, that must be a sign. No. So what are we doing? We've just purchased a neighbouring house. It's going to become the IB suite in years to come. It's a beautiful little house that you can access from the high school playground. We've nearly finished a building. So we've got a hall next to us, and we have bought the house next door. So that building is a 2-storey building which will have a nido, a third 3 to 6 classroom, and a new primary classroom. And that will be finished by the end of the year. And yes, we have bees. So we don't yet, but they're on their way. So and the children are very excited about that. The board wasn't, but they're a lot more excited now. Yeah. What we always, I think that's important, is we're always developing. Meeting in the middle that some of the teachers have talked about has been instrumental for us. So that annual meeting is really important because the staff come back with new ideas. We're going to move to a 3-hour work cycle in the mornings, which we haven't been able to do because we've been so intent on satisfying accreditation authorities. So we're moving towards that, which will bring us in line with the primary. We're going to allocate a day a week for occupations, microeconomy and community. We also have some negotiations with some local farms because we're close to some dairy farms and some organic community gardens. So we're hoping to tap into that. We're already keen for New Zealand next year, which is where we're meeting, and continuing to be in the community, being visible all the time, to build authentic experiences for learning. Why do we bother? I'm not sure, but no, I am sure. So I'll try to play this clip for you, but this clip is very much, it's a little YouTube clip. I don't know if you know, there's a little documentary called The Hack, and it basically talks about the fact that we no longer have, our private worlds have become so public, that in that kind of a world, where it's just driven by data, that it's really important for our children, and this is something that we as a staff are very conscious of, that we've got limited time to reflect, and that our children need the cultural tools. So they need to know things like, how do you behave? How do you know? How do you know the things you know? They must embrace and value imperfection. That's something that is not really encouraged everything has to be just right, but they need to value imperfection and be given the time for that, and have the space to reflect and be creative. So I have a teenager who I live with every day. They're under extraordinary pressure, and even working with them. So I just will try to play this for you.
Has seen an advertisement that has convinced you that your microphone is listening to your conversations. All of your interactions, your credit card swipes, web searches, locations, likes, they're all collected in real time into $1 trillion a year industry.
The real game changer was Cambridge Analytica. They worked for the Trump campaign and for the Brexit campaign. They started using information warfare.
Cambridge Analytica claimed to have 5,000 data points on every American voter.
I started tracking down all these Cambridge Analytica ex-employees.
Someone else that you should be calling to committee is Brittany Kaiser.
Brittany Kaiser, once a key player inside Cambridge Analytica, casting herself as a whistleblower.
The reason why Google and Facebook are the most powerful companies in the world is because last year data surpassed oil in value. Data is the most valuable asset on Earth. We targeted those whose minds we thought we could change until they saw the world the way we wanted them to. I do know that the targeting tool was considered a weapon.
There is a possibility that the American public have been experimented on.
This is becoming a criminal matter. When people see the extent of the surveillance, I think they're going to be shocked.
And I still fear for your life. Yeah. With the powerful people that are involved. But I can't keep quiet just because of the powerful people now.
Data rights should be considered just fundamental rights.
This is about the integrity of our democracy.
These platforms which were created to connect us have now been weaponized. It's impossible to know what is what, because nothing is what it seems.
So, just putting that in perspective, that really, in light of all of that, it is very important that we are equipping our students with, I guess, the cultural tools, the critical thinking skills, compassion for each other, reflective, being balanced learners. These are all IB learner profiles as well. But they are intrinsic to Montessori, people who care for each other and who are concerned about what's right. So just to finish off, so this was in your paper earlier this week. So yeah, students should come first in education. Meanwhile, a teacher's job is not just to teach, it also means being someone who never stops learning. So it was a little editorial by this particular teacher. And just to leave you with those questions, so what does an adolescent program in Taiwan look like? Or what is its flavour? And how is place to be understood? Because when we acknowledge and value place, we understand more of our personal place in the world And so identity emerges and flourishes. And I think that I was reflecting on, I've never been to Taiwan before, and I could feel a really strong sense of place here. It's a place where I can see a lot of cultures have merged. I can feel a Japanese influence, I can feel a Chinese influence, but there's something that's distinctly Taiwanese as well. And that was just from walking through streets in a few days. And I think tapping into that is really important for your children. And in a way it's even harder because they're immersed in it. So sometimes it's harder to know what that identity looks like when it's so much a part of you. But yeah, thank you for the opportunity. I hope you've napped. I really hope you've had a nap. I know it's hot and it's difficult. And I'm more than happy to take questions and share anything from the slides. So, yeah, thank you.
谢谢老师的精彩的分享。有个问题，好，我有个，反正我讲中文的。我有个问题，就是那个 IB 课程，一直在今天早上听到3个学校里面都有，知道它可以弥补蒙特梭利中学的什么内容，它的好处是什么？
Of the curriculum, I think, is the fact that it's also integrated. So, whilst we have an English teacher, someone who teaches the English literature and language, we do French as our language. While we have separate teachers, there are aspects of it that have to be linked. So the extended essay links them, the theory of knowledge needs to run across all of the disciplines. So in my psychology class I talk about theory of knowledge, but I'll give a lesson in psychology and I'll get children who will jump in and say, oh, that's what we did in bio as well, that's theory of knowledge in biology. So they're looking at, there are these other aspects that run across it. Also creativity, activity and service, some of the things we look at, and it's built into the curriculum. But these happen, these are just good practice, this is good teaching. But because it's built into the curriculum, you're sort of reminded to do it. So in creativity, activity and service, one of the things that psychology we look at is altruism and helping people. So what we've got to look at, well, if you're going to develop this really great community service, what are your motives for doing that? You know, are you going to fly into Fiji and help this community and then go and never have anything to do with this community again? You know, what are the ethics around that? So that's a real strength. I think too, from a marketing perspective, there are real strengths to the IB because it's quite a highly regarded program internationally. Having said that, it still took a lot of convincing with our parents because the argument was, well, why do we need to bother? Why? When we've got a local qualification we could offer and we could still prepare our students. And you could. It just, you wouldn't have the same flavour that the IB brings. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know, does that answer your question?
谢谢老师做这么多的分享。可是我想针对刚才的 IB 的课程，因为蒙特梭利的精神核心理念其实就已经涵盖到全面性整合的内容了，整合的方式。所以其实我还是不太懂 IB 跟蒙特梭利的不同点在哪里。从刚刚老师的回答，我的理解是，它的存在 ，IB 的存在好像是为了定义 市场的需求，还有满足家长的安全感存在的，是这样吗？谢谢。
Yeah, so originally it was the IB was created by diplomats. Also, it was encouraged by diplomats who were moving around and they wanted something that was consistent as they were sent to different placements. So it grew out of that. I think the difference, the essential difference is that there can be, this is something I feel, there can be pressure that is applied on the student. That pressure to meet the demands of such a rigorous course, and that has been really difficult for us because you don't want to push them too hard, but we really believe in that. And there are other Montessori high schools in Australia that I know of who don't go to year 12, so they go to the final year, but they don't offer the IB. So they offer things in a slightly different way. You know, they might tap into their local qualification, but bring a unique flavour to that. The difference is if those children are wanting to go to university, that you really have to set up negotiations with the university in order to get the uni. So, yeah, I don't know, does that answer your question or not totally? Oh, so why we don't? Yeah, yeah. So in the middle years we do a Montessori. So from 7 to 10, we do a Montessori program, but we also heavily have our Montessori national curriculum that we use, and then we also use the department, the national New South Wales curriculum in there. And the reason we don't use the MYP there is because we've got the Montessori national curriculum and the other curriculum that covers everything. And that if we offered MYP, we would have to train our staff in MYP. Like it's another added level that we don't feel we would need to do when Montessori is doing that for us. And yeah, I think we could prepare our children more, and that's something that we're doing more and more all the time, trying to prepare them for those 11 and 12 years. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you have a question? So I know a lot of schools are trying to do the Montessori IB in their higher education program. And my question is, as you mentioned, the IB program has a lot of coherence with the Montessori, the pedagogy, but at the same time, IB is a very demanding program in terms of requirements and testing and everything. So when there's the tension that you mentioned, when there's a shortage of time, and also the Montessori theory of following the child, allowing them to follow the interest and allowing them to teach. So when there is a pull to go, follow the IB curriculum and fulfill the requirements versus the child's interest in going deep into something, how do you balance that in your curriculum?
Yeah, and are you specifically speaking 11 and 12? Those yeah. So. The way we balance that is, so I'm thinking specifically of a student who we had who was really driven in the area of physics, and he just wanted to do physics all day, and we would have loved to have let him do physics all day because that was what he needed to do. But it's also about keeping in mind that we're developing the whole individual, and that there are these other aspects that he will need at some point. So right now, he's sensitive, and his desire is physics, and still is. He's in his 4th year of a mechatronics degree, but he needs to have those other areas in order to be sort of whole student, if you like. So his language and literature is really important, and you know his mathematics is very important. His French is also important. His mother's French anyway, but you know, so he's had to develop these other aspects of himself as well, and that's an argument that the children give us a lot. You know, that I really want to keep, even the younger years, I really want to keep on this. And I guess we've got the flexibility when they're younger, because we can say, that's great, let's go. And we can observe. So observation's really important, and we can sit back and go, is this avoiding? Are you following that because you really don't want to do your maths? Or is it that it's a need you have at the moment, and let that go and then be able to jump in later on? And that's where the team's really important. But in year 11 and 12, it's difficult to have that luxury. So it's about having the discussions and just helping them to manage that whole course, I guess. Because the reality is it's going to be more demanding than anything they do at university. Because at university, they're going to be in the areas they enjoy. Yeah. So yeah, it's hard. Yeah. 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 It is, yeah. Any other questions? Yeah? Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Yeah.
再次谢谢今天3位讲者的分享，还有感谢大家参与今天的讲座。另外特别谢谢寿丰跟振宇今天8个小时为大家的翻译。那请大家在掌声